welcome to part 2 of the Batman tutorial. So now that we have our rig done, it's ready for skinning. First thing we're going to do is right click and unfreeze all. We're going to select our model, right click and go object properties, and then untick see through so we can see what we're doing. And then with our character selected, we're going to go over to the modify panel, and then in the modify drop down we're going to put the skin modifier. We're going to apply the skin modifier. You should see a box that says bones and a button that says add, so we're going to click that. We're going to highlight everything in the tab, all our cat bones, except character 001, because that's the parent at the bottom, and then click select. Now we have assigned our bones to our character mesh, so if I grab the foot placement here and move it around, you notice my mesh moving along with it, but you'll also notice that my mesh is moving really horrible. So now I need to set up the weights for this skinning so that it can move around properly. To make it a lot easier, we're going to go over to the display panel and we're going to make sure bone objects is ticked so that it hides all our bone objects. Now we're going to select our character and go back to the modifier, and then in the skinning options we're going to click edit envelopes. I'm going to turn vertexes on. Now you should see a little button here that looks like a spanner called weight tool. We're going to open that up. And then all these little black lines here, they represent our bones. So if I select one of them, you'll notice things getting affected by it. The red represents that it's getting affected 100%, whilst the blue means it's getting represented 0.1%. So before we start, let's turn on the edge faces at the top there. And we're going to select all the bottom of our foot here. And we're going to click 1. So now that foot is 100% affected by that bone. If I select my foot platform and move it, you'll notice that stretching is gone, because that whole mesh is now being affected. If I move it up, the leg up here, you'll see how our joint now is crushing really badly, so we need to define this with the skinning. So we're going to go back to the envelopes, edit envelopes, and we're going to select our leg 2 bone, and we're going to select all these row of vertexes at the bottom of the knee, and we're going to set it to 1 so that it's 100% affected. Now we're going to select our middle row here where it deforms, and then we're going to click blend so that it's basically doing a 0.5 weight onto that joint, so it's half affected by each bone. Now we're going to select our leg 1 bone at the top and then select the row above the kneecap, push 1. Then we're going to select our middle row again. I accidentally selected a wrong vertex here. To deselect different vertexes, if you just hold Alt and click, it'll deselect it. So with the middle row there, I'm going to click the blend button again. So now that's affected 50% on either side of the bones. So if I move the leg up, you'll notice it deforming a lot better now. So that's exactly what we want. You can play around to get this perfectly deforming. The mesh flow is very important. The better the mesh flow, the easier stuff will deform. So with the kneecap done, we're going to move on to the most obvious part, the second most obvious part, which is the arm. So I'm going to select the palm bone here. I'm going to select all the bottom of it and select it to 1. So now that whole hand's affected by that palm bone. And I'm going to select the joint in the middle of the wrist and make sure that's set to blend. Now I'm going to set the forearm bone, and then all these little blades on the edge of Batman, as you can see, they're not really affected. So I need to make sure these are all set to 1 so they move with the arm. And now I'm going to select the wrist as well and click blend. Now it's time to move on to the joint, the elbow joint. So I'm going to select the bottom row on the elbow joint and set it to 1, and then I'm going to select the middle row and then set it to blend. Now I'm going to select the top of the arm, get all the top row here, select it to 1, and then the middle row again, and select it to blend. So with the arm selected, I'm going to select all the top of the shoulder joint here, where the arm connects onto the chest, and I'm going to set that to blend, so that when the arm turns, the shoulder joint will blend with it. So let's do the next obvious choice, which is the head here. I'm going to select my head bone. If I select the whole model with the head bone and make sure it's set to 0, then just redo their head here. And then select the neck again to 0.5. I've accidentally selected the shoulder here, so I'm going to have to deselect that. Just going to select it and set it to 0. So with that done, it's time to move on to the chest, and let's just remove what is affected here on the cape. So I'm going to select that and go 0. Okay, I think the body's done, so let's just do a quick one on the cape. Select our bottom bone, select 1, select our middle one, 0.5, and then 0.5 again. Now we need to affect the joints at the top here. This is affecting a lot of the shoulders, so I'm just going to select my shoulder joints and then set them to 0 along with the neck. When the cape bends, I don't want it pulling the character's mesh about. If you notice, I'm only really doing one side. The reason is because there's this little button called mirror mode, which allows me to paste all the information I've done on one side to the other side. If I click it, you'll notice this little guideline pops up. And then if I go to paste green to blue, and then paste green to blue verts, here paste everything I did on the skinning on one side to the opposite side. So if you remember, I never skinned my leg, so if I move this quickly here, you'll notice that it's not stretching, because it's just pasted the information that I've done on my left hand side to my right hand side, which really helps and really speeds up the workflow inside cat rigging. This is why it's one of my favourite systems to work in when trying to get something out. With that done, I'm going to turn back on my bone objects, my bones, and I'm going to set up things called gizmos now, so that I can basically make my life easier without having the bones in the way of my mesh. So I'm going to select my pelvis bone here, I'm going to right click and go add gizmo, and then I'm just going to go rectangle. And then I'm going to adjust the settings here so it looks a bit nicer. With that done, I'm going to select my head, right click, go add gizmo. And this one I'm going to select circle, and then change the radius in. I'm going to do this for the most obvious parts just to make things easier. I'm going to do one for the chest. I'm going to add a rectangle for the chest. And I'm going to do one for each ligament of the arm. The top of the arm, the forearm, and the palm. Right click, add gizmo. And circle. Change the settings down. I'm not going to add one for every bone because I don't plan on moving every bone when it comes to the animation process. So I'm just going to do it for the bones I think are key. I'm going to do the same for the opposite side. But here's a demonstration of how they work. So if I turn bone objects off in the display, you can see all my gizmos here, and if I start rotating them around and moving them about, you'll notice they start affecting my mesh just like if I was moving the bone about, but I'm not getting obstructed by the view of the bone, so I can see what's happening a lot easier and a lot nicer. So this is just a little trick to help you out when it comes to animating. That's the skinning part of the tutorial done, and now you're ready for the animation part.